Section 23 of Hawaiian Legends of Ghosts and Ghost Gods. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Hawaiian Legends of Ghosts and Ghost Gods by William Drake Westervelt. Homeless and Desolate Ghosts. The spirits of the dead, according to a summary of ancient Hawaiian statements, were divided into three classes, each class bearing the prefix "ao," which meant either the enlightened or instructed class, or simply a crowd or number of spirits grouped together. The first class, the Aumakuas, were the desolate and the homeless spirits who during their residence in the body had no friends and no property. The second class was called the Aumakuas. These were the groups of ghost gods or spirit ancestors of the Hawaiians. They usually remained near their old home as helpful protectors of the family to which they belonged, and were worshipped by the family. The third class was the Ao o Milu. Milu was the chief god of the underworld throughout the greater part of Polynesia. Many times the underworld itself bore the name of Milu. The Ao o Milu were the souls of the departed of both the preceding classes who had performed all tasks, passed all barriers, and found their proper place in the land of the King of Ghosts. The old Hawaiians never intelligently classified these departed spirits and sometimes mixed them together in inextricable confusion, but in the legends and remarks of early Hawaiian writers these three classes are roughly sketched. The desolate ghost had no right to call any place its home, to which it could come over, which it could watch, and around which it could hover. It had to go to the desolate parts of the islands or into a wilderness or forest. The homeless ghost had no one to provide even the shadow of food for it. It had to go into the dark places and search for butterflies, spiders, and other insects. These were the ordinary food for all ghosts unless there were worshippers to place offerings on secret altars, which were often dedicated to gain a special power of praying other people to death. Such ghosts were well cared for, but, on the other hand, the desolate ones must wander and search until they could go down into the land of Miu. There were several ways which the gods had prepared for ghosts to use in this journey to the underworld. It is interesting to note that all through Polynesia, as well as in the Hawaiian Islands, the path for ghosts led westward. The students of New Zealand folklore will say that this signified the desire of those about to die to return to the land of their ancestors beyond the Western Ocean. The paths were called Liana a Kauni, paths for leaping by the spirits. They were almost always on bold bluffs looking westward over the ocean. The spirit, unless driven back, could come to the headland and leap down into the land of the dead. But when this was done, that spirit could never return to the body it had left. Frequently connected with these Lahaina a Kauni was a breadfruit tree which would be a gathering place for ghosts. At these places there were often friendly ghosts who would help and sometimes return the spirit to the body or send it to join the Au Akamunas ancestor ghosts. At the place of descent it was said there was an oawa ditch, through which the ghosts one by one were carried down to Po, and Lilono was the gate where the ghosts were killed as they went down. Near this gateway was the ulu o lei walo, or breadfruit tree of the spirits. This tree had two branches, one toward the east and one toward the west, both of which were used by the ghosts. One was for leaping into eternal darkness, into Pau Pai Ole, the other as a meeting place with the helpful gods. This tree always bore the name Ulo o Lei Walu, the quietly calling breadfruit tree. On the island of Oahu, one of these was said to have been at Kaena Point. Another was in Nuuanu Valley. The desolate ghosts would come to this meeting place of the dead and try to find a ghost of the second class, the Aumakuas, who had been one of his ancestors and who still had some family to watch over. Perhaps this one might entertain or help him. If the ghost could find no one to take him, then he would try to wander around the tree and leap into the branches. The rotten dead branches of the tree belonged to the spirits. When they broke and fell, the spirits on them dropped into the land of Milu, the underworld home of ghosts. Often the spirit could leap from these dead branches into the underworld. Sometimes the desolate spirit would be blown, as by the wind, back and forth, here and there, until no possible place of rest could be found on the island where death had come. Then the ghost would leap into the sea, hoping to find way to Milu through some sea cave. Perhaps the waves would carry the ghost, or it might be able to swim to one of the other islands, where a new search would be made for some ancestor ghost from which to obtain help. Not finding aid, it would be pushed and driven over rough, rocky places and through the wilderness until it again went into the sea. At last, perhaps a way would be found into the home of the dead, and the ghost would have a place in which to live. Or it might make the round through the wilderness again and again until it could leap from a bluff or fall from a rotten branch of the breadfruit tree. A great caterpillar was the watchman on the eastern side of the leaping off place. Naphtha was the western boundary. A moo dragon was the watchman on that side. If the ghost was afraid of them, it went back to secure the help of the ghost gods in order to get by. The Hawaiians were afraid that these watchmen would kill ghosts if possible. If a caterpillar obstructed the way, it would raise its head over the edge of the bluff, and then the frightened ghost would go far out of its way, and wandering around be destroyed or compelled to leap off some dead branch into eternal darkness. But if that frightened ghost, while wandering, could find a helpful ghost god, it would be kept alive, although still a wanderer over the islands. At the field of Keepia, Coral, near Barber's Point, in the desert of Puuloa, the ghost would go around among the lehua flowers, catching spiders, butterflies, and insects for food, where the ghost gods might find them and give them aid in escaping the watchmen. There are many places for the Leina a Kahuni leaping off places, and the Ulu au Lei Walu breadfruit trees on all the islands. To these places the wandering desolate ghosts went to find a way to the underworld. Another name for the wandering ghosts was lapu, also sometimes called akua hele loa, great travelers. These ghosts were frequently those who enjoyed foolish, silly pranks. They would sweep over the old byways in troops, dancing and playing. They would gather around the old mats where the living had been feasting, and sit and feast on imaginary food. The Hawaiians say, on one side of the island Oahu, even to this day the lapu come at night. Their ghost drums and sacred chants can be heard and their misty forms seen as they hover about the ruins of the old heiaus temples. The fine mists or fogs of Manoa Valley were supposed to conceal a large company of priests and their attendants while roaming among the great stones which still lie where there was a puahono refuge temple in the early days. If any one saw these roving ghosts, he was called lapuea, or one to whom spirits had appeared. The Hawaiians said the lapu ghosts were not supposed to watch over the welfare of the persons they met. They never went into the heavens to become black clouds, bringing rain for the benefit of their households. They did not go out after winds to blow with destructive force against their enemies. This was the earnest work of the ancestor ghosts, and was not done by the lapu. Another name for ghosts was wailua, which referred especially to the spirit leaving the body and supposed to have been seen by some one. This wailua spirit could be driven back into the body by other ghosts, or persuaded to come back through offerings or incantations given by living friends, so that a dead person could become alive again. It was firmly believed that a person could endure many deaths, and that if any one lost consciousness he was dead, and that when life stopped it was because the spirit left the body. When life was renewed, it was because the spirit had returned to its former home. The kino wailua was a ghost leaving the body of a living person, and returning after a time, as when any one fainted. Besides the ghosts of the dead, the Hawaiians gave spirit power to all natural objects. Large stones were supposed to have dragon power sometimes. End of section 23. Section 24 of Hawaiian Legends of Ghosts and Ghost Gods. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Hawaiian Legends of Ghosts and Ghost Gods by William Drake Westervelt. Aumakuas, or Ancestor Ghost Gods. There are two meanings to the first part of this word, for au means a multitude, as in awa, many canoes, but it may mean time and place, as in the following. Our ancestors thought that if there was a desolate place where no man could be found, it was the Aumakuas, place of many gods. Makua was the name given to the ancestors of a chief and of the people as well as to parents. The Aumakuas were the ghosts who did not go down into Po, the land of King Milu. They were in the land of the living, hovering around the families from which they had been separated by death. They were the guardians of these families. When anyone died, many devices were employed in disposing of the body. The fact that an enemy of the family might endeavor to secure the bones of the dead for the purpose of making them into fish hooks, arrowheads, or spearheads led the surviving members of a family either to destroy or to conceal the body of the dead. For if the bones were so used it meant great dishonor, and the spirit was supposed to suffer on account of this indignity. Sometimes the flesh was stripped from the bones and cast into the ocean or into the fires of the volcanoes, that the ghost might be made a part of the family ghosts who lived in such places, and the bones were buried in some secret cave or pit, or folded together in a bundle, and these were called unihipili. The unihipili bones were used in connection with a strange belief called puli ana ana, praying to death. When the body of a dead person was to be hidden, only 2 or 3 men were employed in the task. Sometimes the one highest in rank would slay his helpers, so that no one except himself would know the burial place. The tools, the clothing, and the calabashes of the dead were unclean until certain ceremonies of purification had been faithfully performed. Many times these possessions were either placed in the burial cave beside the body, or burned so that they might be the property of the spirit in ghost land. The people who cared for the body had to bathe in salt water and separate themselves from the family for a time. They must sprinkle the house and all things inside with salt water. After a few days the family would return and occupy the house once more. Usually the caretakers of a dead body would make a hole in the side of the house and push it through rather than take it through the old doorway, probably having the idea that the ghost would only know the door through which the body had gone out when alive, so could not find the new way back when the opening was closed. After death came, the ghost crept out of the body, coming up from the feet until it rested in the eyes, and then it came out from the corner of one eye, and had a kind of wind body. It could pass around the room and out of doors through any opening it could find. It could perch like a bird on the roof of a house, or in the branches of trees, or it could seat itself on logs or stones near the house. It might have to go back into the body and make it live again. Possibly the ghost might meet some old ancestor ghosts and be led so far away that it could not return. Then it must become a member of the Aumakua or ancestor ghost family, or wander off to join the homeless desolate ghost vagabonds. Sometimes dead bodies were thrown into the sea, with the hope that the ghost body would become a shark or an eel, or perhaps a moo or dragon god, to be worshipped with other ancestor gods of the same class. Sometimes the body or the bones would be cast into the crater of Kilauea, the people thinking the spirit would become a flame of fire like Pele, the goddess of volcanoes. Other spirits went into the air concealed in the dark depths of the sky, perhaps in the clouds. Here they carried on the work needed to help their families. They would become fog or mist or the fine misty rain colored by light. With these the Rainbow Maiden, Anaui, delighted to dwell. They often lived in the great rolling white clouds, or in the gray clouds which let fall the quiet rain needed for farming. They also lived in the fierce black thunder clouds, which sent down floods of devastating character among the enemies of the family to which they belonged. There were ghost ancestors who made their homes near the places where the members of their families toiled. There were ancestor ghosts to take care of the tapa, or kapa, makers, or the calabash or house or canoe makers. There were special ancestor ghosts called upon by name by the farmers, the fishermen, and the bird hunters. These ghosts had their own kuleanas, or places to which they belonged, and in which they had their own peculiar duties and privileges. They became ancestor ghost gods and dwelt on the islands near the homes of their worshippers, or in the air above, or in the trees around the houses, or in the ocean, or in the glowing fires of volcanoes. They even dwelt in human beings, making them shake or sneeze as with cold, and then a person was said to become an ipu, or calabash containing a ghost. Sometimes it was thought that a ghost god could be seen sitting on the head or shoulder of the person to whom it belonged. Even in this 20th century a native woman told the writer that she saw a ghost god whispering in his ear while he was making an address. She said that ghost was like a fire or a colored light. Many times the Hawaiians have testified that they believed in the presence of their ancestor ghost gods. This is the way the presence of a ghost was detected. Some sound would be heard, such as a sibilant noise, a soft whistle, or something like murmurs, or some sensation in a part of the body might be felt. If an eyelid trembled, a ghost was sitting on that spot. A quivering or creepy feeling in any part of the body meant that a ghost was touching that place. If any of these things happened, a person would cry out, "I have seen or felt a spirit of the gods." Sometimes people thought they saw the spirits of their ghost friends. They believed that the spirits of these friends appeared in the night, sometimes to kill any one who was in the way. The high chiefs and warriors are supposed to march and go in crowds, carrying their spears and piercing those they met, unless some ghost recognized that one and called to the others, "Alia, wait." But if the word was "O io," throw the spear, then that spirit's spear would strike death to the passer-by. There were night noises which the natives attributed to sounds of wrestling motions made by such night gods as the following: Aikua hokio, whistling gods; Akua kii, peeping gods; Akua nalo, prying gods; Akua loa, long gods; Akua poko, short gods; Akua muki, sibilant gods. A prayer to these reads thus: "O Akua loa, long god; O Akua poko, short god; O Akua muki, god breathing in short sibilant breaths; O Akua hokio, god blowing like whistling winds; O Akua kihi, god watching peeping at one; O Akua nalo, god hiding, slipping out of sight. All ye gods who travel on the dark night paths, come and eat. Give life to me, and my parents, and my children, to us who are living in this place. Amama. Amen. This prayer was offered every night as a protection against the ghosts. The Aumakuas were very laka, tame and helpful. It was said that an Aumakua living in a shark would be very laka, and would come to be rubbed on the head, opening his mouth for a sacrifice. Perhaps some awa or meat would be placed in his mouth, and then he would go away. So also if the omaka were a bird, it would become tame. If it were the ale, a small duck, it would come to the hand of its worshipper. If the pueo, owl, it would come and scratch the earth away from the grave of one of its worshippers, throwing the sand away with its wings, and would bring the body back to life. An owl ancestor god would come and set a worshipper free were he a prisoner with hands and feet bound by ropes. It made no difference whether the dead person were male or female, child or aged one. The spirit could become a ghost god and watch over the family. There were altars for the ancestor gods in almost every land. These were frequently only little piles of white coral, but sometimes chiefs would build a small house for their ancestor gods, thus making homes that the ghosts might have kuleana, or place of their own, where offerings could be placed, and prayers offered, and rest enjoyed. The Hawaiians have this to say about sacrifices for the Aumakuas. If a mo'o, or dragon god, was angry with its caretaker or his family, and they became weak and sick, they would sacrifice a spotted dog with awa, red fish, red sugar cane, and some of the grass growing in taro patches wrapped in yellow kapa. This they would take to the lua, or hole, where the mo o dwelt, and fasten the bundle there. Then the mo o would become pleasant, and take away the sickness. If it were a shark god, the sacrifice was a black pig, a dark red chicken, and some awa wrapped in new white kapa made by a virgin. This bundle would be carried to the beach, where a prayer would be offered. O Aumakuas, from sunrise to sunset, from north to south, from above and below, O spirits of the precipice and spirits of the sea, all who dwell in flowing waters, here is a sacrifice. Our gifts are to you. Bring life to us, to all the family, to the old people with wrinkled skin, to the young also. This is our life from the gods. Then the farmer would throw the bundle into the sea, bury the chicken alive, take the pig to the temple, then go back to his house, looking for rain. If there was rain, it showed that the Anuka had seen the gifts and washed away the wrong. If the clouds became black with heavy rain, that was well. The offerings for Pele and Hiaka were awa to drink and food to eat. In fact, all things which could be taken to the crater. This applies to the four great gods, Kani, Ku, Lono, and Kanola. They are called the first of the ancestors. Each one of these was supposed to be able to appear in a number of different forms. Therefore, each had a number of names expressive of the work he intended or was desired to do. An explanatory adjective or phrase was added to the god's own name, defining certain acts or characteristics. Thus, Kane Pua, Kani the pig, was Kane who would aid in stirring up the ground like a pig. This is one of the prayers used when presenting offerings to Aumakuas. O Aumakuas of the rising of the sun, guarded by every tabu staff. Here are offerings and sacrifices: the black pig, the white chicken, the black coconut, the red fish, sacrifices for the gods and all the Aumakuas, those of the ancestors, those of the night and of the dawn. Here am I. Let life come. The ancestor gods were supposed to use whatever object they lived with. If ghosts went up into the clouds, they moved the clouds from place to place and made them assume such shapes as might be fancied. Thus they would reveal themselves over their old homes. All the Aumakuas were supposed to be gentle and ready to help their own families. The old Hawaiians say that the power of the ancestor gods was very great. Here is the magic power. Suppose a man would call his shark, "O Kuhalamona," the shark god. "O the one who lives in the ocean, take me to the land." Then, perhaps a shark would appear, and the man would get on the back of the shark, hold fast to the fin, and say, "You look ahead. Go on very swiftly without waiting." Then the shark would swim swiftly to the shore. The old Hawaiians had the sport called lua. This sometimes meant wrestling, but usually was the game of catching a man, lifting him up, and breaking his body so that he was killed. A wrestler of the lua class would go out to a plain where no people were dwelling and call his god Kualua. The Aumakua ghost god would give this man strength and skill, and help him to kill his adversaries. There were many priests of different classes who prayed to the ancestor gods. Those of the farmers prayed like this: "O great black cloud in the far off sky, O shadow watching shadow, watch over our land, overshadow our land from corner to corner, from side to side. Do not cast your shadow on other lands, nor let the waters fall on the other lands, i.e., keep the rains over my place." Also, they prayed to Kane Pua, Kane the pig, the great Aumaku of farmers. "O Kane Pua root, dig inland, dig toward the sea, dig from corner to corner, from side to side. Let the food grow in the middle, potatoes on the side roots, fruit in the center. Do not root in another place. The people may strike you with the spade, or hit you with a stone, and hurt you. Amama, Amen." So also they prayed to Kukia Oluwalu, a taro Aumakuas god. "O Kukia Oluwalu, make the taro grow. Let the leaf spread like a banana. Taro for us, O Kekua. The banana and the taro for us. Pull up the taro for us, O Kukia. Pound the taro. Make the fire for cooking the pig. Give life to us, to the farmers. from sunrise to sunset, from one fastened place to the other fastened place, i.e., one side of the sky to the other fastened on each side of the earth. Amanma. Amen. Trees with their branches and fruit were frequently endowed with spirit power. All the different kinds of birds and even insects, and also the clouds and winds and the fish in the seas, were given a place among the spirits around the Hawaiians. The people believed in life and its many forms of power. They would pray to the unseen forces for life for themselves and their friends, and for death to come on the families of their enemies. They had special priests and incantations for the pule ana, or praying to death, and even to the present time the supposed power to pray to death is one of the most formidable terrors to their imagination. Menehunes, eepas, and kupas were classes of fairies or gnomes which did not belong to the ancestor gods, or Aumakuas. The Menehunes were fairy servants. Some of the Polynesian islands called the lowest class of servants Menehune. The Hawaiians separated them almost entirely from the spirits of ancestors. They worked at night performing prodigious tasks which they were never supposed to touch again after the coming of dawn. The eepas were usually deformed and defective gnomes. They suffered from all kinds of weakness, sometimes having no bones and no more power to stand than a large leaf. They were sometimes set apart as spirit caretakers of little children. Nuuanu Valley was the home of a multitude of eepas, who had their temple on the western side of the valley. Puas were the demons of Ghost Land. They were very powerful and very destructive. No human being could withstand their attacks unless specially endowed with power from the gods. They had animal as well as human bodies, and could use whichever body seemed to be most available. The dragons or moos were the most terrible kupuas on the islands. End of section 24.
Section 25 of Hawaiian Legends of Ghosts and Ghost Gods. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Hawaiian Legends of Ghosts and Ghost Gods by William Drake Westervelt. The Dragon Ghost Gods. Dragons were among the ghost gods of the ancient Hawaiians. These dragons were called mo'o. The New Zealanders used the same names for some of their large reptile gods. They, however, spelt the word with a K, calling it moko, and it is almost identical in pronunciation as in meaning with the Hawaiian name. Both the Hawaiians and New Zealanders called all kinds of lizards mo'o or moko, and their use of this word in traditions show that they often had in mind animals like crocodiles and alligators, and sometimes they referred the name to any monster of great mythical powers, belonging to a man-destroying class. Mighty eels, immense sea turtles, large fish of the ocean, fierce sharks were all called mo'o. The most ancient dragons of the Hawaiians are spoken of as living in pools or lakes. These dragons were known also as kupuas, or mysterious characters who could appear as animals or human beings according to their wish. The saying was, kupuas have a strange double body. There are many other kupuas besides those of the dragon family. It was sometimes thought that at birth another natural form was added, such as an egg of a fowl or a bird, or the seed of a plant, or the embryo of some animal, which when fully developed made a form which could be used as readily as the human body. These kupuas were also given some great magic power. They were wonderfully strong and wise and skillful. Usually the birth of a kupua, like the birth of a high chief, was attended with strange disturbances in the heavens, such as reverberating thunder, flashing lightning, and severe storms which sent the abundant red soil of the islands down the mountainsides in blood-red torrents known as ka'uakoko, the blood rain. This name was also given to misty fine rain when shot through the red waves of the sun. By far the largest class of kupuas was that of the dragons. These all belonged to one family. Their ancestor was Mo'o'o Inanea, the self-reliant dragon, who figured very prominently in the Hawaiian legends of the most ancient times, such as the Maiden of the Golden Cloud. Mo'o Inanea, the self-reliant dragon, brought the dragons, the kupua dragons, from the hidden land of Cairns to the Hawaiian Islands. Mo'o Inanea was apparently a demigoddess of higher power even than the gods Ku, Cain, or Kanaloa. She was the great dragon goddess of the Hawaiians, coming to the islands in the migration of the gods from Nuumealani and Kauai Heilani to settle. The dragons and other kupuas came as spirit servants of the gods. For a while, this Mo'o Inanea lived with her brothers the gods at Waolani, but after a long time there were so many dragons that it was necessary to distribute them over the islands, and Mo'o Inanea decided to leave her brothers and find homes for her numerous family. So she went down to Puunui in the lower part of Nuuanu Valley, and there made her home, and it is said received worship from the men of the ancient days. Here she dwelt in her dual nature, sometimes appearing as a dragon, sometimes as a woman. Very rich clayey soil was found in this place, forced out of the earth as if by geyser action. It was greatly sought in later years by the chiefs who worshipped this goddess. They made the place taboo, and used the clay, sometimes eating it, but generally plastering the hair with it. This place was made very taboo by the late Queen Ka'ahumanu during her lifetime. Mo'o Inanea lived in the pit from which the clay was procured, a place called Lua Palolo, meaning pit of sticky clay. After she had come to this dwelling place, the dragons were sent out to find home. Some became chiefs and others servants, and when by themselves were known as the Evil Ones. She distributed her family over all the islands from Hawaii to Niihau. 2 of these dragon women, according to legends, lives as guardians of the Pali precipice, at the end of Nuuanu Valley, above Honolulu. After many years, it was supposed that they both assumed the permanent forms of large stones, which have never lost their associations with mysterious, miraculous power. Even as late as 1825, Mr. Bloxam, the chaplain of the English man-of-war, recorded in The Voyage of the Blonde the following statement. At the bottom of the Pali there are 2 large stones, at which even now offerings of fruits and flowers are laid to propitiate the Aku Wahines, or goddesses who are supposed to have the power of granting a safe passage. Mr. Bloxam says that these were a kind of mo'o, or reptile goddesses, and adds that it was difficult to explain the meaning of the name given to them, probably because the Hawaiians had nothing in the shape of serpents or large reptiles in their islands. A native account of these stones says there is a large grove of hau trees in Nuuanu Valley, and above these lie the 2 forest women, Hau'ola and Haupu'u. These are now 2 large stones, one being about 3 feet long, with a fine smooth back, the other round with some little rough places. The long stone is on the seaward side, and this is Mo'o woman Hauloa, and the other Hapu'u. The leaves of ferns cover Hau'ola, being laid on that stone. On the other stone, Hapu'u, are lehua flowers. These are kupuas. Again, the old people said that their ancestors had been accustomed to bring the navel cords of their children and bury them under these stones to ensure protection of the little ones from evil, and that these were the stone women of Nuuanu. Alamuki lived in the deep pools of the Waialua River, near the place Ka Mo'oloa, which received its name from the long journeys that dragon made over the plains of Waialua. She and her descendants guarded the paths and sometimes destroyed those who traveled that way. One dragon lived in the Ewa Lagoon, now known as Pearl Harbor. This was Kanekuaana, who was said to have brought this pipi, oysters, to Ewa. She was worshipped by those who gathered the shellfish. When the oysters began to disappear about 1850, the natives said that the dragon had become angry and was sending the oysters to Kahiki, or some faraway foreign land. Ki'iloe, Ko'e, and Miloi'i were noted dragons of the island of Kauai. They were the dragons of the precipices of the northern coast of this island, who took the body of the high chief Lohauiu and concealed it in a cave far up the steep side of the mountain. There is a very long, interesting story of the love between Lohiau and Pele, the goddess of fire. In this story, Pele overcame the dragons and won the love of the chief. Hi'iaka, the sister of the fire goddess, won a second victory over them when she rescued a body from the cave and brought it back to life. On Maui, the greatest dragon of the island was Kiwa Wahine. The natives had the saying, "Kiha has mana," or miraculous power, like Mo'o Inanea. She lived in a large deep pool on the edge of the village Lahaina and was worshipped by the royal family of Maui as their special guardian. There were many dragons of the island of Hawaii, and the most noted of these were the two who lived in Wailuku River near Hilo. They were called the Moving Board, which made a bridge across the river. Sometimes they accepted offerings and permitted a safe passage, and sometimes they tipped the passengers into the water and drowned them. They were destroyed by Hi'iaka. Sacred to these dragons, who were scattered over all the islands, were the Mo'o priests and the sorcerers, who propitiated them with offerings and sacrifices, chanting incantations. End of section 25.
Section 26 of Hawaiian Legends of Ghosts and Ghost Gods. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by AnnaLisa Bodtker. Hawaiian Legends of Ghosts and Ghost Gods by Drake Westervelt. Chapter 26, The Home of the Ancestors. The ancestors of the New Zealand Maoris have a definite ancestral home from which they came to New Zealand. This bears the name of Hawaiki, which is the same as Hawaii, as also Savaii in Samoa. Some students try to make Samoa the distributing center from which the settlers of the various island groups of the Pacific started to find new homes. This theory has scarcely any foundation. Hawaii, in some form of the word, is found from Java on the western side of the Pacific to Tahiti on the eastern. Honorable L. Percy Smith of New Zealand says, "The universality of this name points to the fact that it is extremely ancient and that it was under that form that the fatherland was originally known. The way in which the name has been used proves the belief of the Polynesians in a western origin of the race now accepted as from India. Hawa, in its many forms, refers to rice fields, the great rice fields of Indonesia. While Hawaii is used so frequently elsewhere, it is seldom named in the Hawaiian Islands as the ancestral home. Fornander, in The Polynesian Race, quotes from an ancient chant, Hawaii, with the green back and dotted sea, and says this refers to the ancient faraway home of the Hawaiians. This reference stands almost alone and therefore emphasizes the statement that the word Hawaiian seldom refers to any land outside the group now called the Hawaiian Islands. This has probably come from the inability of the people to distinguish between a foreign Hawaii and a home Hawaii, although for centuries they have said Hawaii ne, meaning the Hawaii in this spot, as they say Haline, meaning this particular house in which we are. Almost certainly, this has no reference to an ancestral home. The Hawaiians, however, have one word for all outside lands. This was Kahiki, or Tahiti. If anyone sailed to any faraway place, east or west, he went to Kahiki. The ancient Hawaiian chants also mention places, or rather islands, in the western and southwestern parts of the Pacific Ocean: Bola Bola, Nuhiwa, Wawo or Vavo, and Upolu. These places were visited by the Hawaiian sea rovers several hundred years ago, and the names preserved in meles or chants. Usually these places are mentioned as located in the great mysterious outside world, Kahiki. They are not called the home from which the forefathers came. They are only definite places visited by sea-roving Hawaiians in their long journeys to foreign lands. Besides this, there were some beautiful descriptive terms naming the ancestral islands or lands from which the ancient ones came to Hawaii. The most prominent was Kauai Hilani or Kuai Hilani. Kauai Hilani was defined by one of the best Hawaiian scholars as the purchased heaven. This, however, is a modern thought read into it from theology. Another and better rendering is the rubbing or grinding heaven, as if the land had been stirred up by earthquakes or by strife among the inhabitants. If the name is Kauai Hilani, it means a heaven lifted up in sharp ridges, signifying that the people came from a land of high mountains with sharp peaks, a volcanic country. Kanahunomoko, the hidden land of Kane, belonged more to the spirit world than the home of the ancestors. It was like an ignis fatuus, a thing which appeared and disappeared. It was an enticing island, inviting boatmen to seek its shores and then disappearing as they came near. It was the Hawaiian dreamland. Nevertheless, sometimes it was mentioned as one of the places from which the ancestors came. Numialani, the raised dais of heaven, meaning a land with elevated plateaus and possibly rich valleys among high mountains, was a place from which many of the people of the past came to the new volcano land. Sometimes it simply means cloudland. Uluka, moving or floating forest, was like Kanahunamoku, an ocean island which had no abiding place. Storm-driven voyagers would see it through the mist clouds around them. They would put forth every effort to reach it and never find it, or if found, its sweet fruits and fragrant flowers were like dust to those who ate or breathed them, ultimately bringing death. Nevertheless, Uluka was a land from which the ancestors came. Hapakuela is very seldom mentioned in the legends. Its meaning is very obscure. It is possible that it may be Hapakuela. Then it might mean the burning or fiery portions or walls between land districts. This was a home of Pele, according to some of the Hawaiian legends, although most of them say that she came from Kauahilani. Ke'alohilani, the shining or glorious heaven, was the land where the vivid imagination placed all things beautiful. It was the ancient land to be desired. Another interpretation, however, makes it the land of shining clouds, probably lit up by volcanic fires, reflecting the glory of the burning flames. Mokumanamana, the divided island, was some island projecting into the ocean like branches from a tree, an island with bays and inlets. This was one of the places to be desired among the different lands from which the ancestors came. Now it is only known as one of the ancestral places lying toward the sunset. End of 26. Recording by AnnaLisa Bodtker.
Section 27 of Hawaiian Legends of Ghosts and Ghost Gods. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lynda Neilson, Vancouver, BC. Hawaiian Legends of Ghosts and Ghost Gods by William Drake Westervelt. Appendix. Honolulu Aquarium. The Honolulu Aquarium is located in Kapiolani Park on the famous Waikiki Beach, about 5 miles from the center of the city. From 600 to 1,000 fish, covering some 200 varieties of remarkable form and bewildering color, are on exhibition here, forming one of the finest collections in the world. This aquarium was built in 1904 by Mr. and Mrs. Chas. M. Cook on land donated for the purpose by Mr. Jas. B. Castle, brother-in-law to Mr. Westervelt, the author, and is stocked and maintained by the Honolulu Rapid Transit Company. The plant has cost over $20,000 and is being added to and improved from time to time. The color plates included in this volume show only a few of these wonderful fish. Bishop Museum. Mr. Chas. R. Bishop, who founded the Bishop Museum, died in California early in 1915, having just passed his 93rd birthday. He was born in Glen Falls, New York, and sailed around Cape Horn to Hawaii in the early days before steamship communication. His wife, Bernice Pauahui, was a very high chiefess descended from the royal line of Kamehameha the Great. To her Kamehameha V offered the throne, and on her refusal to espouse him remained a bachelor and died without heir. Mrs. Pauahui Bishop bequeathed her vast estate and fortune to found the schools for Hawaiian boys and girls, known as the Kamehameha Schools. Honolulu, and near these, Mr. Bishop found the Bishop Museum, which contains all the magnificent feather cloaks, helmets, calabashes, etc., handed down from generation to generation through the royal line of the Kamehamehas and inherited by Mrs. Bishop. This has been greatly increased by other gifts and purchases and now forms the finest museum in the world of relics of the Polynesian race. Meles. The history of Hawaii can be traced only through the ancient meles, poems without rhyme or meter, but strictly accented, often several hundred lines in length, handed down orally from one generation to another. The mele included all forms of poetical composition intended for chanting. They are usually divided into four groups, as the religious chants, prayers, and prophecies. The inoas, or name songs, composed at birth of a chief recounting heroic deeds of his ancestors. The kanikaus, or dirges for the dead. The epos, or love songs. All the modern songs are love songs. The cadencing consisted of a prolonged trilling or fluctuating movement called ee, in which the voice went up and down in an interval less than half tone. This was used extensively in the oli, a songful expression of joy or a humorous narrative, which was even more lyric than the mele. Hula. The modern hula is not the hula of ancient time. The hula combined pantomime, poetry, music, and the dance. It was enacted in honor of the goddess Laka and furnished entertainment for the chiefs and their retinues. It included the mysteries of Polynesian mythology and the history of the nation. It was given by trained and paid performers, and it was a difficult accomplishment and required long and rigid training in both song and dance. Hulas varied in dignity and rank, and the character was influenced by the musical instruments used, which were as follows: the ipu, a drum made of two large pear-shaped gourds of unequal size, joined together at the smaller ends, in which a hole was made to increase the resonance. The pahu, a drum made of coconut wood and covered with shark skin on its upper end, originally used in the heiaus and on rare occasions in the halu. The puniu, used with the pahu, a small drum made from a coconut shell and fish skin, which was strapped to the thigh and played with a thong of braided fibers. The uli uli, a small gourd filled with seeds. The puli, bamboo sticks splintered into fine divisions at one end and giving a rustling sound like wind. The lau, two pieces of resonant wood. The ili ili, two pebbles used like castanets. The ukiki, something like a Jew's harp, the strings being plucked with ribs of grass. The conch shell or trumpet. The pua, a small gourd. And the ohi, or nose flute. The ukulele, a small guitar having only 4 strings, now used, was introduced in the time of Kalakaua and is modern. It affords, however, an effective accompaniment for the deep, rich quality of the Hawaiian voices. The halau was a flat top open structure covered usually with coconut leaves specially erected for the performance of the hula, and to which leis and awa were brought as emblems of light-heartedness and joy. In every halau there was a bower of green leaves which were supposed to be the abode of the presiding deity. The devotees of the hula worshipped many gods, but the goddess Laka was the patron to whom special prayers and offerings were made. Excerpt from an article by Helen G. Cadwell, Thrums Annual, 1916. End of section 27. End of Hawaiian Legends of Ghosts and Ghost Gods by William Drake Westervelt.